little house next to a dark, dark forest, there lived a poor man and his 2 children, a brave girl who was almost a woman, and a sweet baby who was almost a little boy. Their fortunes had been poor, and they had not much to eat and not many blankets to hide beneath in the cold winter. But what they lacked in physical comforts, they made up for with love and loyalty. Our story might not have been a story at all, were it not for the fact that the evil witch, Baba Yaga, who lived in the dark forest, came to steal the baby boy away from the family. The girl and her father had sat up at the fire singing when a cold wind blew out their lamp and filled the tiny house with cold. They heard the harsh laughter of Baba Yaga and the receding sound of the baby's cry as Baba Yaga carried him away through the night air. The father despaired that all was lost, but Natasha, his clever daughter, said, "I am brave enough to go and bring back my little brother. Give me some bread and oil, some meat and cheese, and I will leave at the first light of the morning." With that, Natasha went to sleep by the fire, and her father busied himself with preparing her basket. As soon as the first rays of the sun touched the tops of the trees in the forest, Natasha sprang awake. "Are you certain you will go?" her father asked. "I could send for men from the village who are big and strong and skilled in fighting." "Father," said Natasha, "I am brave and kind and clever, and that will serve me just as well." With that, she set off, carrying her basket. It was almost as dark as night in the forest, and filled with all manner of clawing shadows. Natasha felt a shiver of fear, but sang a little song as she walked along. She decided to leave a trail of breadcrumbs behind her, that she might be able to find her way out again once she had reclaimed her brother. As Natasha pulled the bread from her basket, a large black bird with bright orange eyes appeared in front of her. "Hello, bird," Natasha said bravely. "I am going to Baba Yaga's hut to rescue my little brother. I intend to leave myself a trail of breadcrumbs that I might know my way, but may I also share my bread with you?" The fierce blackbird was a servant of Baba Yaga's, and it had for a long time been his job to destroy the trails of breadcrumbs that were left by children lost in the woods. But he had never before known such kindness or generosity, so he humbly bowed his head and thanked Natasha, who offered him a generous hunk of bread, and continued on her way. At last, after many hours of walking, Natasha came to the place in the woods where Baba Yaga lived. Her courtyard was ringed by a fence made of bones, attached to which there was a rusting iron gate. Inside the yard was Baba Yaga's hut, which stood on 4 giant chicken's feet and moved of its own. At present, the chicken feet were bent and resting, and the house was mostly still, though it rose and fell slightly every few moments, as if the house itself were breathing. Natasha could hear her brother crying from inside. The giant mortar and pestle in which Baba Yaga traveled was nowhere to be seen, which meant that the witch was not at home. Natasha took a deep breath to encourage herself and pushed the gate open. As she did, the hinges screeched terribly. "Hello, gate," Natasha said. "I am going to Baba Yaga's hut to rescue my brother. I intend to leave again through this very gate. May I oil your hinges?" The gate was enchanted by Baba Yaga, and it had for a long time been the gate's responsibility to creak loudly to alert Baba Yaga to the comings and goings in her yard. But the gate had never known such attentiveness and grace, so it held still and quiet as Natasha oiled the hinges with the olive oil her father had sent with her. Straightening up, she continued along the path of black stones that led to the hut on chicken legs. Near the steps leading up to the door was a huge black dog, with bright yellow eyes. As she saw Natasha approaching, the dog stood up and showed her sharp white teeth, which were made sharper by gnawing on the bones lying about the door. Natasha felt as if she might fall down in a faint, so terrified was she. But she managed to put on a brave face, and noticing that even though the dog was huge and tall, she was so skinny that her ribs stuck out, Natasha said, "Hello, dog. I am going to Baba Yaga's hut to rescue my little brother. I intend to climb these steps, but before I do, I was going to eat some of this meat for strength. May I share some with you?" The hungry dog was a servant of Baba Yaga, and it had for a long time been her duty to guard the hut against intruders. But she had had nothing to eat but bones for weeks, and she was mightily hungry. She had never known such courage and gentleness, and so she laid down and rested her chin on her paws like a puppy as Natasha pulled the meat from her basket and fed it to the fierce beast from her own small hands. With that, Natasha climbed up the wooden steps leading to Baba Yaga's hut. As she opened the door, a big black cat with bright green eyes hissed to Natasha, "Who dares to enter the house of Baba Yaga?" Now Natasha was very frightened. In the dark hut of Baba Yaga, in the dark forest where no sunlight shone, and finding herself face to face with a talking cat at that. But she saw that the cat too was as skinny as the dog, as neglected as the gate, as lonesome as the bird. And she said with all the courage she could muster, "Hello, cat. I am here at Baba Yaga's hut to rescue my baby brother. I intend to carry him home to where he belongs, but I understand that offerings must be made. I have this cheese that my father gave to me. May I offer it to you?" The wise cat was a servant of Baba Yaga, and for a very long time it had been up to him to guard and beguile the lost and kidnapped children that Baba Yaga kept in her hut. But he was a clever, sensitive beast who knew of magic and of conversation, and he had been ignored and rejected by Baba Yaga at every turn. Even so magical a beast as he had been forced to subsist on whatever he could find. It had been so long he could barely imagine cheese. He had never known such respect and politeness, and so he sat down and began to purr a little as he thanked her for the cheese. Natasha now followed the sound of her brother's cries, and found him lying on a bed of rags, crying himself red in the face. As soon as he saw his sister, he reached up his arms to her, and the siblings prepared to leave the hut of Baba Yaga. But just then, there came a terrible, shrieking wind, and the forest outside grew darker than it had been before, and the trees began to shudder, and the hut began to spin around and around on its chicken feet until Natasha could barely stand. The cat cried out to her, "Baba Yaga has come home." Natasha held her baby brother in her arms and faced the door as bravely as she could. There was the sound of the mortar landing in the dirt and the pestle scraping it to a halt. There was the sound of someone cackling wickedly above the high, screaming wind, and the dog set up a howl, and Natasha was near to fainting, but still she kept her ground. Into the hut came Baba Yaga, and what a terrible thing she was to behold. Eyes as red as blood, and teeth as sharp as needles, and claws that came almost down to the ground. "Who is this I find in my hut?" "Hello, Baba Yaga," Natasha began with a quavering voice. "I am here at your hut to rescue my baby brother. I intend to take him back to our home from whence you kidnapped him, and never after have any dealings with you whatsoever." Never before had Baba Yaga experienced such foolhardy bravery, such impudence. She began to laugh and laugh at Natasha. "You will never escape, you silly girl. I will keep you both. Now let's boil a pot of water. I am going outside to sharpen my knives." And with that, Baba Yaga walked out of the hut, and the door locked behind her with a solid click. Natasha was so overcome that she almost began to cry, but remembering that she must be brave for her little brother, she began to look around the hut for a way out. Baba Yaga called in, "So, pretty girl, is the pot filling up?" Natasha looked and saw that, to her horror, the pot was indeed filling up with water all of its own. "Yes, it is," called out Natasha in a frightened voice. The cat said to her in a whisper, "Be still now. I can open the lock, but you must do as I say. Take with you this towel, this acorn, and this comb. As soon as I open the door, you must run, and you must both stay completely quiet. Whatever happens, do not cry out." At this time, Baba Yaga again called in from the courtyard, "Is the pot all full now?" And Natasha saw that the water had risen halfway to the top, so she called out, "About halfway." "Very good, very good," came the reply, and there came too the sound of sharpening blades. The cat said to Natasha, "The moment I open the door, you must run as fast as you can. Baba Yaga will wait for the pot to boil, and I will answer her in your voice. But soon enough she will realize that a trick has been played, and she will chase after you. She is very fast. So here is what you must do. If she catches up to you, throw one of these 3 items over your left shoulder. I have enchanted them for you. They should do you some good. Go now, and my best to you." With that, the cat opened the lock, and the door swung silently open. Natasha, holding her brother close to her heart, ran down the steps, past the dog who bowed her head to the girl, through the gate which was silent, past the blackbird perched on the fence of bones, and out into the forest could carry her, following her trail of breadcrumbs. A little while later, Baba Yaga called into the hut, "Is the pot full?" And the cat answered in Natasha's voice, "Yes, the pot is full now." And a little while after that, Baba Yaga called, "Is the water boiling now?" The cat replied, "Just getting warm." And sometime later, "Is the water boiling now?" The cat replied, "In a little while it will be." After a few more exchanges like this, Baba Yaga realized something was up, and she stormed back into the hut. Imagine her anger and surprise when she found the cat alone. Baba Yaga cried out to the cat, "Why didn't you stop the girl from leaving?" The cat replied, "Because she showed me kindness." Baba Yaga cried to the dog, "Why didn't you bite the girl and keep her from leaving?" And the dog replied, "Because she showed me kindness." Baba Yaga cried to the gate, "Why didn't you creak and tell me that the girl was leaving?" And the gate replied, "Because she showed me kindness." Baba Yaga cried to the blackbird, "Why didn't you eat the trail of breadcrumbs and keep the girl from leaving?" And the bird, too, replied, "Because she showed me kindness." Baba Yaga screamed with rage and leaped into her mortar, flying up, up, up into the air. All this time, Natasha ran through the darkening forest carrying her baby brother. The sun was almost gone now, the trail of breadcrumbs hard to see, and Natasha was breathing hard from running at top speed. All at once she heard the trees shrieking behind her, and she heard Baba Yaga's wicked laughter fill the air. Without daring to look back, she threw the towel that the cat had given her over her left shoulder and kept running. The instant that the towel hit the ground, it became a wide, rushing river. Baba Yaga stopped. She, like all wicked creatures, cannot cross moving water. She knelt down on the banks, opened her mouth, and began to and swallowed until the magical river was gone. And when it was, she again flew up into the air and followed her prey. Again, Natasha heard the shrieking wind in the treetops and Baba Yaga's evil cries. She was very frightened that Baba Yaga had got past the river, and she was very tired of running. But she threw the acorn over her left shoulder and kept on. As soon as the acorn landed, up from it grew a thicket of trees and bushes so dense that none could pass through. Baba Yaga again screamed with anger and began to eat the foliage with her needle-sharp teeth. She chewed and chewed and chewed until the magical thicket was gone, and when it was, she again flew into the air to chase Natasha and her brother. When Natasha heard Baba Yaga's approach once again, she was filled with fear. She was so exhausted that she felt she might collapse at any moment. But she strained her eyes against the gathering dusk and saw that the edge of the forest was near. They were almost home. Giving thanks for the kind assistance of the cat, the dog, the gate, and the blackbird, Natasha said a silent prayer and threw the comb over her shoulder. The second the comb hit the ground, it became a range of mountains, rising higher and higher and higher until their jagged peaks scraped the clouds. Baba Yaga stopped short, and her screams of fury bounced off the stone mountain sides. There was nothing she could do to overcome this obstacle. For her part, Natasha carried her baby brother home, and they both fell into their father's arms. They shed happy tears, and again their house was filled with love and gratitude, and they were never again bothered by wickedness, but lived the rest of their days in joy and peace.